The camera flash illuminated Rose Keller's face as she captured the exact moment. Layla Cranston said yes, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks as her now fiancé slipped the diamond ring onto her finger. It was the perfect shot, intimate, emotional, authentic, exactly what Rose aimed for in her growing photography business. What she didn't notice was the tall, impeccably dressed man standing off to the side, his intense gaze fixed not on his sister's special moment, but on the passionate photographer orchestrating the entire scene. "That's perfect," Rose called out, lowering her camera momentarily. "Now, let's get the families together." As she directed the newly engaged couple and their loved ones, Rose remained oblivious to the fact that Layla's older brother, Kevin Cranston, hadn't taken his eyes off her since she arrived at the engagement party 3 hours earlier. Kevin adjusted his watch, a modest Rolex that belied his actual net worth, and stepped back from the gathering. At 34, he was the founder and CEO of Cranston Maritime, one of the most successful shipping companies on the East Coast. But tonight, he wasn't thinking about cargo vessels or international trade routes. He was captivated by the petite photographer with fiery red hair who commanded the room with surprising authority. "Kevin," Layla called, waving her brother over, "we need you for the family photos." Rose turned as the tall man approached. She'd noticed him earlier, it was hard not to. Sharp jawline, dark hair with a slight wave, eyes the color of the Atlantic after a storm, but she'd been too busy setting up shots to give him much thought. "This is my brother," Layla said. "Kevin, this is Rose, the photographer I told you about." "Nice to meet you," Rose said, extending her hand professionally. "Could you stand next to your mother, please? I want to capture the height gradient." Kevin took her hand, noticing the calluses that spoke of someone who worked with her hands regularly. "Of course, but only if you'll let me see some of these photos when you're done." "My sister says you're the best in Boston." Rose smiled, surprised by the compliment. "I'll send a preview set to Layla. She can share them with you." "I'd prefer to see them personally," Kevin said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Rose felt a flutter in her stomach that she immediately dismissed. Rich family, important client, she reminded herself. "Professional boundaries. Let me get these family shots and we'll talk about it," she said, raising her camera again. For the next hour, Rose worked methodically, capturing the celebration from every angle. The Cranstons were clearly wealthy, the venue alone must have cost a fortune, but they seemed refreshingly unpretentious. Especially Layla, who had found Rose through a mutual friend and insisted on hiring her despite Rose's relative obscurity in Boston's competitive photography scene. As the party wound down, Rose began packing her equipment, mentally calculating how many hours of editing lay ahead. She'd need to deliver at least 50 perfect shots for the Cranstons' announcement. Need a hand. Rose looked up to find Kevin standing there, jacket removed and sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. "I've got it, thanks," she said, closing her camera bag. "I do this all the time." "I'm sure you do," he said, leaning against the wall. "But everyone deserves help sometimes, even independent professionals." Rose smiled despite herself. "Most people don't offer to help the hired help." "Is that how you see yourself?" Kevin asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. "Just hired help." "I'm a service provider," Rose corrected, standing up straight, "and I take pride in my work." "As you should. I watched you tonight. You have a gift for making people comfortable in front of the camera." Rose felt herself blushing and quickly turned away to pack another lens. "Thank you." "Photography is about trust as much as technique. Like many things in life," Kevin agreed. "How long have you been shooting professionally?" 3 years on my own. Before that, I worked as an assistant for a wedding photographer. Kevin nodded thoughtfully. "Building something from the ground up takes courage. I respect that." "And what do you do, Mr. Cranston?" Rose asked, realizing she knew nothing about him beyond his relation to her client. A small smile played at his lips. "I work in transportation, and please call me Kevin." Before Rose could ask for clarification, Layla bounded over, her fiancé in tow. "Rose, when do you think we'll get to see the photos?" she asked excitedly. "I'll have a preview set for you by Wednesday," Rose promised. "But I should warn you, I took over 1,000 shots tonight." "That's what we wanted," Layla said, beaming. "Oh, and Kevin, I told Rose you'd handle the payment since it's your engagement gift to us." Kevin nodded, not taking his eyes off Rose. "I'd be happy to. In fact, why don't I get your information now? We can discuss the final details." Rose hesitated, then pulled out a business card. "My email and phone are on there. Just let me know when's convenient." Kevin took the card, his fingers brushing against hers. "How about dinner tomorrow? We can discuss the photos and I can get a better understanding of your creative process." Rose's eyes widened slightly. "I don't usually, it's a business dinner," Kevin clarified, though his eyes suggested otherwise. "Professional courtesy." Layla giggled beside them. "Oh, go on, Rose. My brother's harmless, I promise, and he's actually a great resource for small business owners." Put that way, Rose found it hard to refuse. "All right, dinner it is." "Excellent," Kevin said, slipping her card into his pocket. "I'll pick you up at 7. As Rose drove home that night to her modest apartment in Cambridge, she couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and trepidation. There had been something in Kevin Cranston's eyes, an intensity, an interest that went beyond professional curiosity. But she'd learned the hard way not to mix business with pleasure, especially with wealthy clients who might see her as a novelty rather than an equal. What Rose didn't know was that Kevin had already called his assistant to research her portfolio, had already looked up her small photography studio online, had already decided that Rose Keller was someone he wanted to know better, much better than a single business dinner would allow. The next morning, Rose woke early to begin editing the engagement photos. She worked meticulously, her coffee growing cold beside her as she selected the best shots of Layla and her fiancé. When she came across the family photos, she paused on one that captured Kevin perfectly. Tall and commanding, but with genuine warmth in his expression as he looked at his sister. She zoomed in on his face, studying it professionally at first. Good bone structure, excellent lighting, but then found herself wondering what his story was. Transportation, he'd said vaguely. Probably worked for his father's business, she guessed, like many of the wealthy clients she encountered. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Looking forward to dinner tonight. I've made reservations at Larson's. Is 7 still good?" Kevin Larson's was one of the most exclusive restaurants in Boston with a months-long waiting list. Rose typed back, 7 works. "But we could go somewhere less formal. I'm easy." His response came seconds later. "I appreciate easy, but I prefer memorable. See you at 7. Rose put down her phone, suddenly aware she had nothing appropriate to wear to Larson's. She'd have to dip into her equipment fund for a new dress, something she resented even as she acknowledged the potential business benefits of impressing a wealthy client. At 6:55 p.m., Rose stood outside her apartment building wearing a simple black dress she'd found on sale, elegant enough for Larson's, but not overly fancy. She'd tamed her wild red hair into a sleek-up doe and applied minimal makeup. Professional but approachable was the look she was aiming for. At precisely 7 o'clock, a black Audi pulled up to the curb. Kevin stepped out, looking even more handsome than she remembered in a tailored navy suit. He opened the passenger door for her with a smile. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," Rose replied, sliding into the leather seat. "This is quite the car for a business dinner," Kevin chuckled as he got in beside her. "I believe in making good first impressions. This would be our second impression, technically." "True," Kevin conceded, pulling into traffic. "But last night you were working." "Tonight I'm hoping to see the woman behind the camera." Rose felt her professional walls wavering. "I should warn you, I'm not very good at separating myself from my work. It's kind of my whole life." "I understand that completely," Kevin said, his expression serious. "Building something meaningful consumes you." When they arrived at Larson's, Rose was surprised when the maitre d' greeted Kevin by name, leading them immediately to a secluded table with a view of the Boston skyline. "You must come here often," Rose observed as they were seated. "Actually, I own a small stake in the restaurant," Kevin admitted. "A side investment," Rose raised an eyebrow. "Transportation and restaurants, you're diversified." Kevin smiled enigmatically. "I believe in supporting excellence, whatever form it takes." As they ordered, Kevin recommending the sea base, Rose choosing the wild mushroom risotto, the conversation flowed surprisingly easily. They discussed photography, Boston's changing cityscape, and their shared love of historical architecture. "So how did you get started in photography?" Kevin asked as their appetizers arrived. Rose traced the rim of her water glass. "My father gave me my first camera when I was 12. He was a journalist, traveled all over. The camera was his way of keeping me connected to his world when he was gone." "Was?" Kevin asked gently. "He died 5 years ago, heart attack while on assignment in Cairo." "I'm sorry," Kevin said, and Rose could tell he meant it. "My father passed last year, cancer. He built our company from nothing, and I've been trying to live up to his legacy ever since." "So you did take over the family business," Rose said, feeling a small victory at having guessed correctly. A flicker of amusement crossed Kevin's face. "In a manner of speaking, though I'd been running it for several years before he died. Cranston Maritime was his creation, but what it's become is largely my vision." Rose nearly choked on her wine. "Cranston Maritime, the shipping company," Kevin nodded, watching her reaction carefully. "Does that surprise you?" I just thought you meant something smaller." "Local transportation or something," Rose admitted, suddenly feeling out of her depth. "Cranston Maritime wasn't just any shipping company, it was a global enterprise worth billions." "You're the CEO." "For the past 8 years, Kevin confirmed. "Does that change things?" Rose considered the question honestly. "It makes me wonder why you're having dinner with a small-time photographer instead of some corporate executive or socialite." Kevin leaned forward, his eyes intent on hers. "Because when I watched you work last night, I saw someone as passionate about their craft as I am about mine. That's rare, Rose, and compelling." The intensity of his gaze made her heart race. "I'm still just a vendor you hired. Is that all you want to be?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibility. Rose took a deep breath. "I think we should focus on the engagement photos for now." Kevin nodded, respecting her boundaries. "Of course, show me what you've selected so far." Grateful for the shift back to professional territory, Rose pulled out her tablet and showed him the preliminary edits she'd made. As they discussed the images, Kevin's insights surprised her. He had an excellent eye for composition and seemed genuinely invested in capturing his sister's happiness. "These are extraordinary," he said when she'd finished the presentation. "Layla was right about you." "Thank you," Rose said, pleased by his approval. "I'll deliver the complete set by next week." "I have no doubt they'll be perfect," Kevin said, "but I have another proposition for you." Rose tensed slightly. "What kind of proposition?" "Cranston Maritime is celebrating its 40th anniversary next month. We're hosting a gala at the Harbor Hotel. I'd like to hire you as the official photographer." Rose blinked in surprise. That would be an amazing opportunity." "But don't you usually use corporate photographers for that kind of event?" "We do," Kevin acknowledged. "But their work lacks the humanity I saw in yours. Our company isn't just about ships and cargo, it's about people and connections. I think you could capture that beautifully." "I'd need to know more details before I commit," Rose said, professional instincts kicking in despite her excitement. "Scope, expectations, compensation." Kevin smiled appreciatively. "I respect your business acumen. I'll have my assistant send over the full brief tomorrow." "The fee will be substantial. This is our flagship event of the year." As they finished dinner and moved to dessert, the conversation shifted back to personal topics. Kevin asked about her studio, her dreams for expanding her business. Rose found herself opening up about her struggles as a small business owner, the competitive nature of the Boston photography scene. "The hardest part is getting noticed," she admitted. I do good work, but so do 100 other photographers in this city. What would help you stand out? Kevin asked thoughtfully. Rose laughed. A celebrity client wouldn't hurt, or a feature in Boston Magazine's Best of Issue. Both seem achievable, Kevin said with such certainty that Rose found herself believing him. When dinner ended, Kevin drove her home, the comfortable silence between them charged with unspoken attraction. Outside her apartment, he walked her to the door. Thank you for tonight, Rose said, suddenly shy. It was illuminating. Does that mean you'll consider my offer for the gala? I'll review the details when your assistant sends them, but yes, I'm definitely interested. Kevin smiled, clearly pleased. And would you consider having dinner with me again, without the business pretext? Rose hesitated, weighing the professional risks against the undeniable connection she felt with him. I think I'd like that. Good, Kevin said softly. He leaned down and kissed her cheek, his lips lingering just long enough to send a shiver down her spine. I'll call you tomorrow. As Rose watched him walk back to his car, she realized she was in dangerous territory. Kevin Cranston wasn't just wealthy, he was powerful, connected, and could probably make her career with a single phone call. But that wasn't why her heart was racing. It was the way he'd looked at her across the table, like she was the only person in the room worth seeing. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Rose delivered the engagement photos to an ecstatic Layla, accepted the gala photography job at a fee that made her accountant gasp, and went on 3 more dates with Kevin, each one making it harder to maintain her professional detachment. They'd been careful to keep their budding relationship private, especially from Layla, who would undoubtedly start planning another wedding immediately. But as the night of the Cranston Maritime Gala approached, Rose found herself increasingly anxious about navigating her dual roles as Kevin's photographer and his. What? They hadn't defined what they were to each other yet, though the goodnight kisses had grown progressively more passionate. On the evening of the gala, Rose arrived at the Harbor Hotel 2 hours early, dressed professionally in black pants and a blouse, her cameras and equipment organized with military precision. Kevin had arranged for an assistant to help her, a thoughtful gesture that allowed her to capture both candid moments and formal shots throughout the evening. The event was spectacular, a showcase of Cranston Maritime's global reach and influence. Executives from around the world mingled with local politicians and business leaders. Rose worked diligently, fading into the background as she'd been trained to do, capturing the essence of the celebration through her lens. She was adjusting her camera settings when she felt a presence behind her. You look like you belong here, Kevin said quietly, handing her a glass of water, though I keep wanting to introduce you to everyone as more than our photographer. Rose took the water gratefully. That would be complicated. Only if we make it so, Kevin said, his eyes serious. Rose, these past 2 weeks have been Mr. Cranston. A portly man in an expensive suit approached them, hand extended. Magnificent event, your father would be proud. Kevin's expression shifted seamlessly into CEO mode. Thank you, Senator. Have you met our photographer, Miss Keller? The senator barely glanced at Rose. Charming. Kevin, I wanted to discuss that port expansion project we talked about. Rose slipped away, understanding Kevin's world in a new way. He existed in a sphere of power and influence that was entirely foreign to her. What could he possibly see in her that he couldn't find in someone from his own world? As the evening progressed, Rose found herself watching Kevin through her camera, commanding the room during his speech, graciously accepting congratulations, skillfully navigating complex business conversations. He was magnificent and undeniably in his element. When the formal part of the evening concluded and guests began to depart, Rose started packing her equipment, satisfied with the hundreds of images she'd captured but emotionally exhausted from maintaining her professional facade. Are you leaving? Kevin appeared beside her, looking somewhat disheveled after hours of hosting. I've got what I need, Rose said, not meeting his eyes. I'll start editing tomorrow. Stay, Kevin said, touching her arm. Please, I've barely seen you all night. That's generally how it works when I'm hired to photograph an event, Rose said with a small smile. I'm supposed to be invisible. You could never be invisible to me, Kevin said, his voice low. From the moment I saw you at Layla's engagement, taking charge, seeing things no one else noticed, you've been the most visible person in any room. Rose finally looked up at him, her resolve weakening. Kevin, what are we doing? You and I'm just, if you say just a photographer, I might have to kiss you right here in front of the remaining board members, Kevin warned. Despite herself, Rose laughed. That would certainly make tomorrow's business pages. I don't care, Kevin said, surprising her with his vehemence. Rose, I know we come from different worlds, but when I'm with you, I don't feel like a CEO or a Cranston or anything except a man who's falling for an extraordinary woman. Rose's heart pounded. It's been 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 3 days, and approximately 14 hours since I first saw you, Kevin corrected. But who's counting? Before Rose could respond, Kevin's assistant approached with an urgent message about a key investor who needed attention. Kevin sighed. 10 minutes, he promised Rose. Wait for me? Rose nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As Kevin walked away, she finished packing her equipment, mind racing with conflicting thoughts. Part of her wanted to flee, to protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak that would come when Kevin realized they were too different. But a stronger part, the part that had built a business from nothing, that had pursued her passion, despite all obstacles, wanted to stay and fight for whatever was growing between them. 40 minutes later, Kevin found her on the hotel's rooftop terrace, looking out over Boston Harbor. I'm sorry, he said, joining her at the railing. That took longer than expected. It's okay, I needed some air anyway, Rose said. Your world is intense. Kevin loosened his tie. Too intense, Rose considered the question honestly. I don't know yet. I just know that when I'm with you, I feel both more myself and more possibilities than I've ever felt before. Kevin turned to face her, taking her hands in his. That's exactly how I feel. Rose, my life before you was all spreadsheets and strategy. You've reminded me there's beauty in imperfection, in spontaneity. I'm pretty sure your life was also private jets and luxury, Rose teased gently. Tools, not joys, Kevin insisted. Ask Layla. I'm notoriously boring, all work, no play. You don't seem boring to me. That's because you make me better, Kevin said simply. Will you let me try to do the same for you? Rose looked into his eyes and saw sincerity, vulnerability, and something that looked remarkably like love. Yes, she whispered, but we take it slow. I need to know this isn't just about the novelty of dating the help. Kevin winced. You're never going to let me live that hired help misunderstanding down, are you? Not in this lifetime, Rose confirmed with a smile. Kevin pulled her close, his arms encircling her waist. I can work with that timeline. Their kiss on the rooftop was different from the others they'd shared, deeper, more certain, full of promise. In the months that followed, Rose's life transformed in ways she could never have anticipated. Her photography business flourished, partly due to the connections she made at the Cranston Gala, but mostly because of her undeniable talent. Kevin supported her ambitions without trying to control them, understanding that her independence was integral to who she was. They navigated their different worlds with honesty and humor. Rose learned to hold her own at business dinners with Kevin's associates, while he discovered the joy of casual Sunday brunches with her artist friends. Layla, upon discovering their relationship, was ecstatic but sworn to secrecy until they were ready to go public. 6 months after the gala, Rose moved her studio to a larger space in a historic building in downtown Boston, a building that, she discovered on signing day, Kevin had quietly purchased and was renovating specifically for creative businesses. They'd had their first real argument over that, with Rose insisting she didn't want special treatment. The compromise was market-rate rent and a 5-year lease with standard terms. I want to help you succeed, Kevin had explained, but never at the expense of your pride. On their one-year anniversary, Kevin took Rose back to the rooftop where they'd shared that pivotal kiss. As the sun set over Boston Harbor, turning the sky to fire, he knelt down on one knee. "Rose Keller," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You captured my sister's engagement through your lens, but you captured my heart just by being you. Will you marry me?" The ring he offered was perfect, not ostentatiously large, but exquisitely designed, with a vintage setting that reflected Rose's aesthetic sensibilities. "Yes," she said, tears blurring her vision. "1,000 times yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Kevin grinned. "I should warn you, Layla's already planning our engagement party. She's talking about hiring a photographer." Rose laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Tell her the position's been filled. This time, I want to be in the pictures, not behind the camera." Their wedding the following spring was intimate by Cranston standards, only 200 guests instead of the 1,000 Layla had initially proposed. Rose wore a simple, elegant gown and carried a bouquet of wildflowers. Kevin's voice broke as he recited his vows, promising to support her dreams as fervently as his own. The photographs from that day taken by Rose's mentor and former boss captured everything. The love between them, the blending of their different worlds, the beginning of a partnership based on mutual respect and admiration. 3 years later, Rose's photography studio had expanded to include a gallery showcasing emerging artists, while Cranston Maritime had launched a foundation supporting arts education in underserved communities, a joint project that combined Kevin's business acumen with Rose's creative vision. When their daughter was born, a spirited girl with Kevin's blue eyes and Rose's red hair, they named her Catherine, after Rose's father. Kevin took an unprecedented 2-month paternity leave, shocking the business world but delighting his employees. "The shipping lanes can wait," he told Rose as they watched their newborn sleep. "Some moments you can't capture in a photograph, you have to live them." Rose leaned against his chest, content in ways she'd never imagined possible when she'd first arrived at Layla's engagement party, camera in hand, unaware that the tall, intense man watching her from across the room would become the center of her world. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Marrying someone so outside your usual circle?" Kevin kissed the top of her head. "The only thing I regret is not noticing you the moment you walked into that party. I wasted at least 20 minutes that could have been spent falling in love with you." Rose laughed softly, careful not to wake the baby. "Always the efficiency expert. Only when it comes to loving you," Kevin said, holding his family close. "Everything else can take its time."